Hi, I'm Nitzan.
And I'm Adam.
And this is Stories from the Eastern West, which is all about little-known histories from Central and Eastern Europe that changed our world.
This week, we're heading a little north.
The Nokia cell phone.
This is the Nokia 3310. It was the best-selling phone in the world.
Nokia is struggling to stay on top.
Tech industry insiders were drawn to a new post-Nokia buzz surrounding Finland's mobile communications sector.
We have got more than 100 spin-off startups from Nokia. All of them are doing some global software business.
I've never thought about the Finnish technology sector to have anything special. I mean, it's just a very geeky culture.
Did you have a Nokia 3310 back in the day? I know I did.
You could see those little phones everywhere. But at around the same time, there were a lot of less visible but still very important tech breakthroughs that came out of Finland. Oh, and Angry Birds.
Which is pretty impressive considering that Finland's population is small. Only 5.5 million people live there. That's about the same size as the state of Minnesota.
To help explain how it happened, we're going to hand this story over to Molly Schwartz, a reporter who lived in Finland for almost 2 years. Hi, Molly.
Hi. Yeah, I got really curious about how this small country turned itself into a global tech powerhouse. So I started digging. And I learned about something that came before Nokia's mobile phones. Something I'd never heard of, even though it's still around today. Something called the demo scene. And I learned that the demo scene isn't so easy to define. It's a subculture with its own history and traditions and terminologies. To understand what the heck the demo scene is and how it happened, we need to go back in time to the 1980s, when it all began.
Coming up on Stories from the East and West.
Zlín, Praha, Warszawa, Madrid, London, Paris, New York, Casablanca.
Where you see a kind of totality of the human presence.
Absolutely. That is exactly
Tak jak my w życiu, nigdy do końca nie ma odpowiedzi i nie będzie. To jest takie...
Stories from the Eastern West.
28 years ago, in 1991, Willi Miettinen was 16 years old. He was a student in high school, but then he ran away from home.
I started programming when I was 6 or 7. I started doing it as a living when I was 16. So I ran away from home, moved on my own, finished my high school, but at the same time supported myself by doing programming gigs.
One of his favorite things to do was play computer games.
Obviously, we didn't have too much money, so what we resorted to was piracy.
When Willi started copying games in the 1980s, he wasn't copying and pasting them. He was playing and recording.
And of course, in the 80s, computer games were distributed on C-cassettes. I mean, we're not talking about floppy disks or CD-ROMs, but actual C-cassettes. And the way to copy a game was to get like a double-deck ghetto blaster. So you put one cassette in here and press play, and you put another one in, a blank one, and press record. And that's how you copy the game.
Soon, it turned into a game of cat and mouse.
So the games publishers at some point realized that this is happening and they weren't too happy about it. And they started adding more and more complex copy protection systems that would prevent this from happening. And of course, what we did was basically do workarounds around this copy protection. So we essentially ended up cracking the games.
It took skill to crack these games. Willi wanted to take credit when he did it. But cracking games was also illegal. Signing his full legal name on a stolen game could have landed him in jail. So he did what all the other software pirates were doing. He signed games using a pseudonym.
Kind of like a tag, the same way as I wouldn't say street gang member, but let's say a graffiti or a tagger artist would add. And so a game might have a tiny little text there in the loading screen or in the title screen saying cracked by, well, Willi in my case, but cracked by someone.
This is how demos were born. They started out as something simple. Just a piece of text rolling across the screen at the beginning of a cracked game, like the opening credits to a movie.
And then someone thought that, hey, since there's a few unused bytes of memory left there, that could actually add some code there as well that does something with the text. So maybe the text would be initially flashing, or it would be scrolling, or maybe going through a sine wave or something like that. And these track troves started to become more and more elaborate. Those evolved into what we call intros and later on demos.
Demos evolved from something like a graffiti tag to something more like a music video.
So these are non-interactive, real-time generated art and music.
Even though demos look and sound like music videos, the music and graphics aren't created and saved in advance. They're generated by code in real time. Making demos became serious in the late 80s. Over time, a whole scene started to emerge, and this was the birth of the demo scene. Demo sceners shifted focus, from cracking computer games to making computer art.
Once the demos became more and more complex, a single programmer just couldn't do them, but you also needed an artist or a few artists. You needed a musician. Your little demo group needed also a PR person or someone who's communicating with the other demo groups and so forth.
The demo groups that started forming were called demo crews. These crews organized big events where they could meet each other. These were called demo parties.
You wanted to meet people, so a lot of these demo parties were organized, and I would say that geographically, this was very much of a northern European thing. So it was really, really big in Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Holland, UK, Germany.
At first, demo parties were pretty small, just 30 to 40 people who came together to swap and play games. But soon they became really big events.
And it also became very competitive. People were renting a bus, and then 100 people from Helsinki would go to a demo party in Denmark.
Demo crews started competing against each other to see who could make the best demos. The goal was to do the most amazing tricks possible on really tiny amounts of computing space.
And so the people started meeting at these demo parties. They were competing in different categories. For example, that like a 4K intro means that you have 4 kilobytes for all your code, all your music, all your graphics, 4 kilobytes. I'm not talking about megabytes or gigabytes, but kilobytes. You need to cram everything there, and whoever creates the coolest stuff in 4K is the current king.
Through the mid-'80s and early 90s, the demo parties started becoming more and more epic. In 1993, a demo crew called Future Crew made a groundbreaking demo called Second Reality. It debuted at Assembly in Helsinki.
All right, let me check this out.
When Future Crew showed Second Reality, everyone in the audience was blown away. This was one of the first demos where the music is synced up with the graphics. It took place in the PC demo competition. If you're wondering how they made it, there's a home video of Future Crew working on Second Reality in July of 1993. It shows 5 young men hanging out in a basement. They're sitting around computers and blasting music. A couple of them are coding on the 2 computers. The rest huddle around, giving feedback. Watching the musician work in this video makes it clear how time-consuming it was to make music on these early machines, and how difficult it was to get the music to sync with the graphics. Listen to how the musician writes code, plays it, takes some notes, pauses the code, writes more code, and plays it again. You have to remember that this was before there was any software for digital music. There are no sound waves on the screen, just rows and rows of computer code that the musician is hand coding. The crew is clearly having fun together. They're hanging out, eating snacks, and joking around. But even though they're having fun, it's kind of amazing to realize how hard they worked on something that was just a hobby for them.
We didn't think that we are actually building a company. We weren't thinking about trivialities like money or something like that in the beginning. It was much more about learning 3D graphics, the technologies, building stuff that other people would use, and obviously being the best in that area. So there was a lot of bragging and bravado as well.
Soon, the amateurs in the demo scene were making more advanced graphics than the professional game developers.
That community that came out of this learned very rapidly and basically surpassed what the games industry, for example, was able to do in terms of graphics effects and so forth.
Willie thinks that people learned so quickly in the demo scene because it wasn't just competitive. It was also cooperative.
Something that really differentiates it from, let's say, typical startup scenes or business environments is that it was also very communal and supportive. So, for example, if someone comes up with a new idea or a new special effect or graphics routine, they would, of course, use that knowledge to win a competition, sure, for the bragging rights, but then they would tell other people how they did it, so that the overall community, the understanding advanced at a really rapid pace.
When Willie got older, he decided to take what he was doing in the demo scene and turn it into a career.
When we're kids in our teens, early 20s, we're doing this as a hobby, and many of us thought that, hey, we could do something like this as a living.
Willie and his friends formed a 3D graphics company called Hybrid Graphics in 1994.
Oh, the very, very first office was a single room at an old cable factory. It wasn't even converted into proper work use. I wouldn't say we're squatting, but that's not too far from the truth. And we only had a couple of computers, PCs. The artists, some of the artists were slightly older. They got the day shift, and us, the programmers, we got the night shift. And we were using the machines 24/7. Everyone was smoking cigarettes, and it was always full of smoke. People were sleeping at the office, even though it was completely illegal.
This company, Hybrid Graphics, ran kind of like a scrappy anarchist collective. But they were doing groundbreaking work in computer graphics. After a while, the largest, most established tech company in Finland came knocking.
But then in 2001, we were approached by this 100-something-year-old company, but they had this short period when they were really good at making mobile phones.
That company was Nokia. In 2001, Nokia was at the height of its power, but they knew competition was growing. They needed to keep innovating. So they sent a team of their researchers over to the old cable factory where Hybrid Graphics had its offices.
And they had a research team come over to us and ask us very innocently that, do you guys think it would ever be possible to display 3D graphics on a mobile phone?
Willie's first thought was, no way. Mobile phones at that time were really basic.
In 2001, a mobile phone, it would have had a black and white display. I'm not talking grayscale, I'm talking black and white pixels. The resolution would have probably be, 96 by 65 pixels. The size of the screen slightly bigger than a post stamp.
Willie didn't think it'd be possible to put 3D graphics on the little phones that Nokia was making in 2001.
We just started laughing. Haha, very, very, very funny.
But then Willie started to think. He knew he could make complex graphics on tiny amounts of computing space.
However, we did, like all of us, have a background in the demo scene where we had been doing this kind of stuff on Commodore 64s and Amigas and very early PCs. So I started thinking that maybe it might be possible to actually do something.
Willie used the knowledge he had gained by stuffing complex graphics into 4 kilobytes at demo parties. And they fit 3D graphics onto 60 kilobytes of space that they had on those tiny, iconic Nokia phones.
And we had 3D graphics there.
Then they took the code they created and turned it into an international standard.
We built the very first commercial implementations of a standard that became something that's used in pretty much every single cell phone these days.
While some of the older sceners were moving on to other things, that didn't mean that the scene had stopped growing. Around the same time that Willie was starting hybrid graphics, a young teenager from the countryside discovered the demo subculture.
My name is Taneli Tikka.
Taneli joined the demo scene because he wanted to make art.
I had been programming games on my own already, and once getting introduced to the demo scene, I thought that, okay, this looks like a lot of creative fun.
In the summer of 1995, Taneli was 16 years old. He piled into a car with his demo crew. He brought a sleeping bag and canned food. His parents didn't exactly know where he was going.
Parents at that point, I don't think they really knew what the whole thing was about, so they just thought that it's some boyish summer camp type of thing.
Taneli and his crew were on their way to Helsinki to go to the largest demo party in Finland, called Assembly. That's the same place that Future Crew had blown everyone away with Second Reality.
We also slept and ate on our computer desks. We cooked our meals on the spot, ate them on the spot, and slept on the spot for basically 3-4 days straight. And it was just super fun party. That there was so many things going on all throughout the night, that people networking, sharing stories, having fun, and then trying all these little pranks all around. That year, I think it was the same thing as goes on in many of the demo parties, that playing super silly music way too loud and setting up these contraptions that have really bright blinking lights and annoying the hell out of people with those. And so there was a lot of this kind of teenage silliness going on. It was really memorable. That I had a blast, and I would have easily wanted to continue just sleeping and eating at the same hall for another week if I could have.
Taneli became good friends with the people he met through the demo scene and online gaming.
And the social ties that people were able to create with just a text-based game, were so strong that we had couples and marriages forming because people got to know each other by playing together.
He could see the social potential of the early internet. He was impressed. So Taneli decided to turn this phenomenon into a business.
While I was still a student, I established my first startup at the age of 21. It was called Taika, which is a Finnish word for magic. The company was aiming to build what is nowadays known as social media. Our vision was that someday the internet will be a social place. In 2000, we released this product called Taika Presence. And Taika Presence was a system that allowed you to send 160-character SMS-length messages to the people who follow you.
It was Twitter before Twitter.
And it wasn't called microblogging, or it wasn't called Twitter, it was called Taika Presence, exactly the same thing. And pretty much only ourselves and our employees and some of our friends use it, and the rest of the people really saw no use for it at all at that time.
Taneli went on to become a serial entrepreneur. He's in his 40s now. He's started and exited a lot of tech companies. He'd exited 16 companies at last count. When Taneli first got active in the demo scene, the startup scene in Finland was non-existent. But now, Finland is a startup hub. There are over 500 startups in Helsinki alone. Finland is responsible for 10% of the world's startup exits, which is huge for a country of its size. And the startup scene is growing. Finnish companies earned 349 million euros in funding in 2017. But when looking at the way that all these tech companies in Finland do business, Taneli sees traces of the demo scene.
Yeah, I have the impression that the Finnish startup scene, or the whole startup industry, whatever you call it, is different in a way that by default, almost every person in here has this inbuilt willingness to cooperate and share information and help out, to pay it forward in different kind of ways. And we've worked hard over the years not to form these kind of exclusive clubs or kind of sub-silos of the startup scene that would then compete or fight against each other much.
The demo scene started as a kind of counterculture movement. The first demo artists were software pirates. The first demo parties were DIY events. But now the demo scene has been around for 30 years. It's gone more mainstream, more establishment. The first generation of demo-sceners are in their 40s and 50s. They've had careers. Some of them have made a lot of money. But even within these more established institutions, like huge gaming companies, the demo scene spirit has lived on, for better and for worse. The demo scene is made up almost entirely of men. Many of them have worked together for a long time. They trust each other and they hire each other. And their spirit of silliness and irreverence has shaped some of the world's most popular gaming companies. Today, Willie works on multiple projects at once. He's worked both in Helsinki and in Silicon Valley, and he's noticed differences in how they function.
I would say that in the US in general, people value work and hard work and working hours. So people would be bragging that they're working 60 hours a week or 80 hours a week or something like that. And over here, if you were saying something like that, other people would be like, poor you, like, can't you just work smarter?
Finland's different way of working hasn't stopped it from being a major tech innovator on the world stage. Willie thinks there's a connection between the work style and the type of technology people in Finland create.
The pace is slower, and we have a very strong engineering background. It's a country run by engineers. So it kind of leads to, how do I say, more tech-heavy companies. And every single company that I'm working with, helping out, all of them are like hardcore techie stuff, so very complex. You're competing globally still. What you need to do at that point is to do something very hard and tricky.
Lately, Willie has been working at Varjo, a company that's gotten a lot of press attention for its revolutionary VR lenses, and at Umbra, a 3D graphics company.
The community we had here then, the startups in the gaming and tech industry, we followed a lot of these traditions and especially the values that we had in the demo scene. The idea of sharing, open access to information, and so forth. So the startup scene in Helsinki and Finland has always been really supportive in that sense, of really open. So, for example, if I walk around here at Umbra and I talk with people, just with talking with them or looking at their code or how they build things, I do immediately know that there's some heritage.
The demo scene is still around and active today, but it's changed a bit since the early days. It's no longer an underground economy of cracking and swapping games. These days, video game companies actually send recruiters to demo scene parties to scout for new talent. Assembly, which is still the biggest demo party in Finland, has large corporate sponsors. 3 of the top games companies in Finland, Remedy Entertainment, Supercell, and Rovio, came out of the demo scene. But the story of the demo scene is not just a story of increased commercialization. The pipeline from demo scene to commercial tech is not the path that every demo scener has taken. There are plenty of demo sceners, back in the 1990s and today, who don't work in technology at all, who just make demos because they enjoy it, and they have friends in the scene. For many of them, the demo scene is still a realm of art and friendship, untainted by the demands of a day job. Willie is the first to admit that getting money involved ruins some of the fun.
Well, yeah, I think... Oh, I do have one more question, actually.
Sure.
Do you still... it sounds like you played a lot of computer games.
When I was a kid, yeah.
When you were a kid, do you still play games?
I really stopped doing that in the mid-90s when I got involved in the games industry. It's kind of like being a drug dealer, like don't get high on your own supply. It's kind of like, I guess gynecologists get bored at looking at genitals at some point, and it was the same for me. Like I just didn't feel like playing anymore.
This episode of Stories from the East and West was produced by independent producer Molly Schwartz and brought to you by Culture.pl.
It was written and produced by Molly and edited by Adam Żuławski and Wojciech Oleksiak. Wojciech took care of the scoring and sound design too. And Adam and I did some talking, but only a bit.
Molly would like to thank several people that helped her along the way.
Reporting for this story took 2 years and lots of interviews. My experience with computer games is limited to solitaire, so I had a lot to learn. Thanks so much to Jussi-Pekka Harviainen, Pekka Akko, Markku Reijonainen, and Jukka Kaupinen for helping me understand this subculture.
And we would like to thank all of you for being with us and listening to the show.
Yes, this is the very last episode of season 2, and we're absolutely thrilled to see how more and more and more of you are listening to each new episode.
We're already working on season 3, but first, in a few months, we'll be back with something special, a mini-series to coincide with the upcoming 30th anniversary of the political transformation in Europe.
That's right. Meanwhile, remember you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or email us at stories@culture.pl. And for the very last time this season, if you liked our show, Adam, what should our call to action be today?
Okay, well, maybe just because it's the last episode doesn't mean you can't help us. Like, write reviews in Stitcher. If you've got Stitcher, yeah, write a review there. Or if you use Apple Podcasts, that's also great. Yeah, that'll help us. If you use Overcast, there's a little star there. You can click the star.
Thanks, Wojciech. Okay, guys, stay with us. There are a lot of great stories coming up very soon, we promise. It's been amazing. Thank you for another great season, and see you soon.
About us, just write them an email. Right? Maybe. I've got to finish the call to action. And you could write an email to people. Write your cousins, let's say, or write your local politicians, because they have power of some sort, and they could tell other people, and maybe do like one of those street campaigns, where you hang out brochures, with mine and its faces on it, and just write your own copy there.